This is Facets of Connection, where we are transforming relationships within an evolving world. Brought to you by Relational Life Foundation and hosted by me, Sarah Melissa Oswald. This exclusive podcast series delves into the heart of human connection, exploring how we learn, love, and collaborate within a dynamic society. We'll uncover the power of respectful relationships and their essential role in the human experience. I invite you to embark on a journey with me to create a more connected, empathic world for future generations. Motherhood. It's beautiful, it's messy, and it's a journey like no other. Whether you're a new mom, a seasoned pro, or just someone who wants to understand the highs and lows of raising little humans, this podcast episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by Kendra Williams, and a motherhood coach who helps mothers reconnect with themselves beyond the role of mom. In our conversation, we're exploring what it means to be a whole person while navigating the demands of parenthood. The challenges, the joys, but mostly the identity shifts that no one really prepares us for. So grab a cup, take a deep breath, and let's talk about the human underneath the title of mother. At the start of this episode, I am telling my own motherhood story for the first time. It actually comes out of a live event that we hosted. And so there is a short slide deck that goes along with this section. If you'd like to view those slides as I'm telling my story, they can be found in our show notes. I also want to name that this was our very first podcast recording, and as such, the mic I used is a little bit choppy. I'm sorry in advance. Please trust that we've since sorted out that audio issue, and the quality will be better in subsequent episodes. I know you will enjoy this conversation with Kendra. And with that, here we go. I move to share my personal story with you in such a way that highlights both my personal growth and the practical tools that I have found in the hopes of making the rest of our conversation more relatable and impactful to everyone. Knowing that Kendra's work and my work are both so located in the body, I'd like to take a moment, first and foremost, to do a somatic dedication of sorts. So I'd like to invite everyone who's listening to take a moment and come into your body, whatever that looks like for you. You might close your eyes or put your hand on your heart or on your belly. And I invite you to simply notice what's there. Welcome all parts of yourself. Emotions might arise for you as I speak my story. I'm sure they will arise for me. And I'd like to welcome you to be with whatever comes up for you. Thank your body for being here and return to the group. Beautiful. Thank you. My story is going to shed rays of light on my shadows. That's my plan, at least. And while I do have a story to share, I want to be sure that it's clear that I'm not here to position myself as the expert. I'm a co-traveler with a lived experience to reference on my own journey of curiosity and celebration of all facets of human connection. I'd also like to start by locating myself. I am a cisgendered, white female in a heteronormative marriage. And despite my commitment to education and to awareness, I come to the table with all the blind spots that someone in my position might hold. And this means I will inevitably make mistakes. I'm a human. My perfectionist self is not thrilled about that. It's in recovery, though, And I'm coming to terms with the fact that I will mess up here. And when I do mess up or offend someone, I welcome this community to reach out. I trust that you can hold me in warm regard while you call me out on my human imperfections, and trust that I'm capable of holding both you and myself in warm regard as I hear your feedback. All right. So with that, I'm going to dive into sharing my own story with you. And then I'll bring Kendra on to join me in conversation. This is my family, my husband, Miko, and our son, Luca. I was one of those people that had dreamed about being a mother since I was a little girl. When I became a mother in 2020, I was struck by how confined I felt. I'd like to invite you on a journey into my experience over the past 4.5 years in order to set us up for the conversation to follow. There's a grief in motherhood that I found. For me, there was grief of not loving the motherhood experience the way that I always dreamed that I would. There was grief for the parenting that I did not receive myself. There was grief over the parts of myself that had to fall away. And there was grief as the tiny person I brought into the world became uniquely designed to poke me exactly where it burned. There are emotional challenges embedded into the parent-child dynamic. The unique ways that children trigger deep, unresolved emotions in their parents. This was my experience. This is what it felt like to me, actually. My experience of motherhood felt like nails on a chalkboard, especially during those toddler years. I would find myself getting super activated when Luca was dysregulated. Those moments that I wanted to be regulated for him, instead, I felt like my anxiety was through the roof. And typically, I would either find myself shutting down or snapping. I hated this. I really hated this because it's everything I did not want to be for him. But I didn't seem to know how to respond any other way. I didn't have a strong protective boundary to keep myself feeling safe. Yes, even in the face of a toddler, I felt unsafe. But in the moments that I would snap, I certainly didn't have a strong containing boundary either to protect him from me. I felt stuck. My self-esteem would plummet after these moments, and I would shame myself. I'll circle back to these concepts a bit later, but I wanted to place them here for the awareness. These are RLT concepts, relational life therapy concepts. Containing, protective boundaries, shame, grandiosity. But back to my story. I knew that Luca was simply acting his age. It's completely appropriate for a 2 or a 3-year-old to swing from being super sweet to wildly irrational, hysterical, and demanding. Staying in kindness for my child was of the utmost importance to me. One of the things I discovered was this study that said a child's mental health mirrors the mother's mental health and well-being. In particular, the number one indicator for how children grow up to thrive is the quality of their mother's happiness. Mothers teach their children about being in relationship with other people, not just through their words, but through their actions. And self-work is vital, not just for you as a parent, but for the child. I've been told my whole life that I would be this amazing mother. And I honestly felt like I was failing at that. Not all of the time, to be honest, not even most of the time. But in those moments of overwhelm, which happened probably at least once a day, I felt like a stranger to myself. Now, I can't tell you about breaking the generational cycle without going back to my own childhood. It took me a strangely long time to realize why I was so quick to snap at Luca. Now it seems so obvious. I had a complex relationship with my father. I weave him into this story not to shame him or to out him, but because I must bring light to this aspect of my own shadow in order to heal it. My father passed away in 2020, 4 months after I became a mother. And so I share that with you because it is finally safe for me to speak my truth, the truth that I felt forced to hide from the world. So it finally dawned on me that Luca's demands mirrored the constant demands I felt from my own dad. Because he, for our entire relationship, had occasional outbursts the way a healthy 3-year-old does. Being the daughter of my particular father made my experience of being near a needy toddler excruciating. I would become emotionally flooded. I was desperate to stop this cycle, but as I said, I couldn't see a way out of it. Even with relational life therapy in my tool belt. Speaking of relational life therapy, I'll share this famous quote from its founder, Terry Real, because it directly applies to what I'm talking about. He says, family dysfunction rolls down from generation to generation like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. I will admit to you that it took every bone in my body, but I am proud to say that I have found a way to stop the trauma of my father's lineage from being passed forward. Stopping the cycle was something I thought I had already tackled way before my child was born, but it turns out that my kid knew exactly how to fan that flame, so to speak. Having high anxiety as a new mom caused me to be controlling, just like my dad had been with me. And being that I was the child of a controlling parent, it was the very last thing I wanted to do to my kid. It became obvious I was mirroring my father when I tried to control Luca's behavior. And on the flip side, I came to realize that when I allowed Luca to control me, I was recreating that powerless feeling I had as a child. It took me a few years to see this pattern, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I'm grateful to have finally seen that I was recreating these old emotional patterns. I still didn't know what to do with that, nor did I see the direct correlation of how to find a different response in those tough moments with Luca. Until I discovered Kendra Williams and the concept of matrescence and conscious parenting, which is what we are here to talk about today. I'm going to let Kendra address that and tell us more about what it is, because she does such a beautiful job. But first, I will tell you this. I needed to connect with my inner child in the moments I was most triggered with Luca. This was my key back to health and sanity. It took and still takes getting into my body. I've been studying Gestalt therapy this year, which is offering my nervous system an opportunity to know what it's like to be in my body safely. And so with that, I have a story to share. It's about being stuck alone in a snowstorm for over a week with Luca, with no power, no internet, and no cell phone service. I was the only adult, and we were stuck. Now, you can imagine that might create a ton of unease in someone who has high anxiety as a mother and is triggered easily by her toddler. But this snowstorm felt like a gift in some ways. I had nowhere else to be, and it gave me a chance to drop any sense of urgency. All the other things that I had been carrying around and trying to do were suddenly no longer important. And all that was important was being with my kid. And during that week, I would put him to bed, and then I would sit with my journal and I would contact my inner child. Let me start by telling you a story of when I was 4.5. As you can see here in this photograph, I got to meet Minnie Mel. And I came back to New York City, where I lived, and I insisted that everyone call me Minnie. I was obsessed with her. For 2 years, I went by Minnie. And I share that with you because in those moments where I was contacting my inner child, I had this revelation to call her Minnie. And my entire body lit up and said, yeah, that's me. I'm Minnie. And she appeared to me. And so I suddenly had this new relationship with her that I was cultivating. And there was a moment during this wild snowstorm where we were at the kitchen table and Luca started having a tough moment about something. Honestly, I don't remember what. I think it was probably that I gave him the wrong beverage. And he was yelling and doing the toddler thing. So I walked back into the kitchen to get him a new beverage. But as I did that, I took a moment. I took about 30 seconds. I put my hand on my chest and I said, I see you, Minnie. You're okay. I see you. You're safe. Luca's just having a tough time. You're having a tough moment. I got you. And then I returned to Luca in the other room with so much more patience and kindness. I was floored. Something that could have turned into a mountain of anxiety was transformed inside of me within moments. It was clear to me that this practice of contacting Minnie in my evenings alone was really paying off. So much so that I was able to turn myself on a dime and respond to Luca with more awareness and inner grace than ever before. This felt stinking huge. I'm laughing because it's so big and it continues to feed me and transform my parenting experience. When I began to see this progress, I was overcome with gratitude for my own mother, who had clearly faced the flames of her own family of origin and chose to do something different as a parent. Thank goodness for my mom. I had a kind, patient mom. She truly taught me healthy, secure attachment. And thankfully, I have a blueprint in my body of how to find it within myself. And I know that's a real gift that not everyone has. What's wild to me is that through this whole process, I didn't see the link back to the work I do as a relationship coach. It just took me a while. I was so in my own story of it. In particular, what I've shared with you here correlates quite well with relational life therapy, a method of relationship work that I'm certified in. Within this model, individuals are encouraged and supported to identify and form a relationship between their wise adult and their wounded child. There's also something that RLT calls the adaptive child, which I'm not going to get into here. But through reparenting our own inner children, we take responsibility for ourselves. instead of hoisting them off onto our partner or to our children to deal with. Through conscious parenting, we allow our children to be our teacher while simultaneously taking responsibility for the reparenting of our own wounded children. Kendra is going to talk a lot about that in just a few minutes. Relational life therapy also focuses on the intersection between self-esteem and boundaries. But this is not your ordinary self-esteem and boundaries. I'll show you a very simplified version of the RLT relationship grid just to give you a sense of this. So here it is. In RLT, the energy of self-esteem is paired with the notion of contempt. When our self-esteem is too low, the flashlight of contempt points inward and causes us to experience toxic shame. But when our self-esteem is too high, the contempt points outward and causes us to move into grandiosity. On the horizontal axis, we're looking at boundaries. And here we're talking about both protective and containing boundaries, not the kind of boundaries you would set with somebody else. That's called limits. Children need limits. But here we're talking about psychological boundaries that you put in place for yourself to both protect the world from you and to protect you from the world. The goal is to be both protected and connected at the same time. So, back to my family. I'm thrilled to tell you that things today are much different for me. My new mom anxiety has somehow settled, and I'm thrilled to say that I am truly loving my relationship with my growing son. As my inner work developed, I didn't need to be as overt about it. But in the toughest moments with Luca, when he's screaming and kicking and spitting and scratching, which he does in all-out tantrums, I paused to speak to my little girl, Minnie. I've even allowed Luca to witness me telling Minnie that she is safe and comforting her. I'm now much quicker to catch myself in a frustrated moment and apologize if I lose my calm. It's not perfect. I don't think any parenting relationship could possibly be perfect. But I am in contact, in relationship with Luca, human to human. All this to say, the work I ended up doing to get myself to where I am now in my motherhood transformation ties directly into the concepts of relationship work. Therapeutic methodologies that I've studied like RLT, like Gestalt, family constellations, and groups as living systems. And lastly, before I introduce Kendra, I want to share a quick video with you that I took during that wild snowstorm. Cheers, Luca.
Dear Luca, here's Luca, here.
Drinking some hot chocolate.
They're my nothing. It's my cooking.
Special day for Mommy and Luca.
Special day for Mommy and Luca. Very hate.
Whoop. Oh, here comes John. At the plow. You can see how much snow we got. Thanks for watching that. It makes me laugh. I am thrilled to tell you that we have Kendra Williams here to discuss all of this with me. Kendra is a motherhood coach who helps high-achieving women redefine success in motherhood and beyond. She is a certified conscious parenting coach, a master practitioner of NLP, and a Mama Rising facilitator. Kendra is a wife and a mother to two, and she is passionate about rewriting the modern motherhood experience so that women can enjoy their own lives while raising the next generation. Thank you for being here, Kendra.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
I am so glad you're here.
And thank you
Really
for
nice to
sharing
see you,
your
Kendra.
story. I heard pieces and specific moments, but I never heard the whole arc. So thank you for letting me witness that.
I don't know that I saw it until more recently. Arc,
Yeah. You have to be on the other side.
Exactly. I don't know if I'm on the other side, but somewhere. I believe that it is our duty to bring our unique light to the world. What do you believe your light is in this world? How do you think relationships might be central to that light?
Oh, that is a terribly easy and hard question all at the same time. To keep it short and sweet, I felt like the first 30 years pre-motherhood, I had literally no light. That my history, the light was snuffed, and motherhood became this catastrophic bomb that lit my inner pilot light. And then it was up to me to fan it and make it this thing. And my literal job, my mission, my passion, personally and professionally, is to literally just shine so that others can just see their own light. Truly. I had to know who I was, at least a little bit, and then continue to dive in and explore more. And the exploring never ends. And the more I know me, the more I can share with my children, the more I can share with my husband, with my community, with everything. It's all relationship to self.
That shows up so clearly in the work I see you're doing.
Yeah. Motherhood is the relationship with self journey. And we'll get into that when we talk about matrescence. It is, we should sell it like that. We should sell it as relational life therapy.
It ties very closely to the relational life therapy model, actually.
It's not about kids. It's not about the chaos of all of the things going on. The best way to get through this is to anchor into a relationship with yourself. So feel like planning to have a kid, the first question is, how's the relationship with yourself, capital S, going? Not how's the baby room and how's the nursery and what's in your diaper bag. Yeah.
No one talks about that. You do. But very few people in our community or culture prepare women to become mothers.
Yeah. Yes.
From the inner experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned matrescence. Would you be willing to give us a definition of how you understand the concept of matrescence?
Absolutely. So on paper, the term matrescence means the developmental process of becoming a mother. It sounds very similar to the term adolescence. Back then, we went through puberty physically, and then it kicked off 5-ish years of our identity shifting. We move from being enmeshed with our parents to this individuated version of self, and it's like a murky time. And the same thing happens to us women when we have children, whether we birth them, adopt them, get them as bonus kids, however we come to have a child. We then enter a period where our identity is meant to shift as we evolve into the next version. And society will start to view you differently. Expectations will be different. The relationship with your parents changes. These are all things that happen to us in adolescence. And now we're going through it all again while caring for helpless, beautiful little beings, no sleep. So there are a lot of women that focus on the puberty part. That's where a lot of people talk now, the fourth trimester, the body, how our bodies don't go back. I specifically focus about 2 years on the identity piece. And where I differ from other people talking about it is I really like to focus on the maiden archetype and what it means to be a maiden in motherhood with all of the time in the world. The world does get to revolve around you. It's a certain set of systems you live in. And when you go into motherhood, when the world thinks your work isn't worth anything, it's a vacation when you're gone, what does it mean to go into the mother archetype? So that's where I kind of add on a little bit of my witchiness and spiritual side. Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
You mentioned 2 year. What do you mean by that?
So a lot of people think that we're going to bounce back, not just physically, but like after the first couple of years, you're just going to like get it. And you're going to be a mom and you're going to understand everything that's going on. Your relationship or your marriage is going to be back to normal. And it's usually about that 2-year mark that people go, this whole gig one isn't what I expected. I don't have my body back. It's about the 2-year mark where it's so clearly, I need help feeding the baby. I need to understand how to do this thing. It becomes a self thing. I say the terrible twos aren't terrible because the kids are. It's because that's when they start to push all the buttons that were installed by your parents. And you're like, what? So 2 is the perfect storm. Your identity is shifting and the kids are like, ready. I'm ready to help you. And then you're like, no, this is where I'm supposed to have it down. At 2 years, I'm supposed to be like the veteran mom. Like, I got this. So that's where I come in.
If I had had this education sooner, I would have had a very different understanding and appreciation for the ways that I was shifting. An ability to really welcome this new identity
Yeah.
rather than be fretting that I've lost myself.
First and foremost, this is where awareness, pure awareness, truly will change your life. You spoke to, we understand the patterns. I know what I'm doing, but I don't know how to break. It's not changing anything. When I tell women about matrescence, there's 2 responses instantly. I'll share mine. Mine was rage. Why didn't anyone effing tell me? I thought I was the crazy one. I thought I was broken. But I was really anxious, so I was already in fight mode. But most people, the reaction is like a very slumpy, sad, oh my God, it makes sense. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change anything, but truly saying you are meant to evolve. And if you had more time, I could tell you all the amazing ways you're going to end up evolving. But right now, I say you're in the caterpillar soup. When you're a caterpillar, there's science-based, there are molecules in the goo. They don't look like anything, but they come from the caterpillar and they go over to the butterfly. You're in the goo. And I promise you, I don't know what's up and down and black and white is technicolor. It's so disorienting, but it's because you're going to this completely new place where you're going to meet a very, very deep part of yourself where you will be able to lead the next generation and lead yourself. So awareness of, okay, this is a season, albeit kind of a long one, and this is supposed to happen. This is profound, makes it go, shoulders down. Okay. That eliminating that toxic shame is very helpful.
This is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I felt a wave of grief rush through.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have any ideas about how mothers might be able to navigate that grief associated with the identity shifts and unmet expectations of parents.
Yeah. I first just want to speak about so much of the maiden to mother process, the matrescence process, is grieving the unknown parts of your old life. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but we didn't really know what we were doing in maidenhood either. A lot of us were in our wounded maiden, we're in our AKA wounded inner child, and our egos are running the show. And we have to grieve, now that I know what kind of freedom I had, and now I don't have it. And now I need to mourn the bodily autonomy I had for the first couple years in motherhood. This isn't my body anymore, and it's not supposed to be right now. Like, you're allowed to be angry about it, but underneath that is grief. Simple rituals of writing letters to yourself, grieving as if this was an actual person. It's a part of you, but formally saying yes, in the same way we write wedding vows and commit to a new future with a partner. Something symbolic in any which way, whichever your religion or spirituality supports, to honor this unrecognized grief. It's not, in the first 2 years, I don't want you to go diving in to the grief. It's time to take care of the child, unless you have an amazing support village and you have the emotional space. But really just saying, I'm entering my motherhood. I'm saying goodbye to my maidenhood. You can still play in maiden on mom's nights and at work. You can be that maiden, but we live in motherhood now. So it's like, we've got to say goodbye to that. A letter, burning something, whatever you want. But I just invite, honestly, a little ceremony or a ritual.
I love that.
Yeah.
Ceremony to create some way to acknowledge and express gratitude for that part.
Yes.
You mentioned freedom. And what I have noticed in myself is that motherhood showed me how much I value my freedom, my independence.
Yeah.
Now that I don't have much of it.
Yeah.
I bet that's another aspect of grief that I've had to process.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by like the grief you're not aware of yet. Like until you hit, there's no such thing as like becoming a mom and then literally getting it, because then there's a new development. Then you have a different kid with a different temperament. And there's just There's no such thing as like, I've got this. That's what happens for like a 9 to 5, but it doesn't happen in relationships because we're dynamic individuals. But yeah, so as you go forward, you learn, oh, now I miss that about my old life. I didn't even know. So it's kind of like this ongoing process. There's a term called maternal ambivalence, which I think is ironic because it's actually just life ambivalence. But the term is related to how us women must hold these dual truths and conflicting feelings at once. That I love my kids and I want to get away. I love that my body made these kids and I hate my body. And I'm so grateful for this time at home, but I miss working. And on paper, people don't want to say these things out loud because we don't want to look ungrateful. But the truth is, life never was that simple. Life was never just happy, just sad, just joy. But motherhood is this pressure. But we believe the hype and we go, I want to be happy and I want my kids to be happy, as if that's like this one happy binary, happy or sad, bad thing. And motherhood goes, you're going to hold the multiplicity of emotions at once and you're going to do it forever. Or that's going to be the goal. We're not going to actually do it all the time.
Well, it makes so much sense that holding the polarity is the key to not only health, but to maturity. It's a forced maturity to be able to hold
Yes.
those polarities.
Yeah. I think I talk a lot about initiated mothers. Not anybody, but if you can have a child and you are on paper, you will be a mother. But it's different than an initiated mother from the inside who has done, maybe they already had a life that was supported and they were guided and mentored to be there, or they weren't and they've done the work and now they are initiated. There is no right and wrong here. There is only the neutral truth, and we will respond in a way that we choose for the path that I have chosen. I want to see. It's just for us. I work with type A workaholic moms because everything fit in a box for me before motherhood, and I was in the good box. And I had never met anything I could not do. I failed at nothing. Right? And then you come into motherhood and you're like, there's no actual good or bad. There's no pass fail. No, nobody's respecting what I do as a stay-at-home mom. I could have either just been a victim and been like angry, or, okay, what can I do with this? How can I start changing my value system to where I actually do value domestic work? Because I was one of those feminists, like most feminists. I think it was Andrea O'Reilly. She said, feminism forgot about mothers. She has a beautiful book called Matrescentric Feminism. And we can lean in and we can do it all. And we can do everything that a man can do. We can vote, we can work, we do all the things. But we still don't value the work of mothering. And I didn't know that. I didn't value the work of mothering until I chose to take a year off. I was making all the money. My husband worked, but I made more. I bought the house. I had the assets. And I'm like, I'm just going to take a year off. And then every time I went to work to visit coworkers, I'm like, don't worry, I'll be back. And like then I'm like, oh my God, I'm poo-pooing on what I'm doing. I don't value
internalized patriarchy.
That's what absolutely. That's a lot of what I do with mothers now is it's not out them. It's not the men or the structures that are oppressing us mothers the most. It's how we uphold them. Right. So my brand is called Free the Mother. It's free yourself from the internalized patriarchy and then free the inner mother. That's the way we're doing it.
It reminds me of this meme that you shared on Instagram of a scene from, is it Scream? Was it Drew Barrymore answering the phone? Like,
oh, yep. When you want to F the patriarchy, but then you realize the call is coming from inside the house. It is kind of a wake-up call for, I wasn't like out picketing, but like I was a feminist and I was doing the thing. And then to be like, oh, I'm a feminist who hates mothers unconsciously. I didn't know until I became one. I was like, that's cute, but like, get out of the way. We got work to do. I just I soaked up the society that I was a part of. So we got on that tangent because back in the society, there is a good and a bad. There's a right way and the wrong way. There's the efficient way. And the line always goes up and to the right. And in motherhood, there is no right way. There is no wrong way. There is as many ways to parent as there are children. And the success is how quickly, when you mess up, because we always will, when we rupture in a relationship, how quickly do we come back into connection? And no one's like counting their ruptures and counting their repairs. We're not like putting that on a leaderboard and blasting it out to our family. Like, I yelled 10 times and that's 2 less than last week. Like, it's a different value system we need to adopt. And obviously, it would be wonderful if we were raised on that value system.
Maybe
And
the
that's
next generation will be.
Yeah. I mean,
It's shifting.
that's the goal. Yeah.
And it turns out that statistically, for building secure attachment, it's not the rupture that is the problem, it's the lack of repair.
Yeah.
And so you can have ruptures, you will have ruptures in any relationship, but to be sure that repair is happening after. That's
Yeah.
what matters.
And that's true for our internal relationship as well.
That's what I was going to say. I work with so many parents that are getting help from social media, which is a great conduit, but they're trying to repair when they haven't repaired with themselves yet. And our kids, I always say they're master pickup artists. They're picking up your incongruency. So if you haven't repaired with yourself, if you are spiraling in shame and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, babe. And I always say you're pouring hot lava on them and your words are, I love you, I'm sorry. And you were like, it starts with self, with the inner child, with Minnie. And then we go repair with whoever, husband, anybody, and you ruptured with.
Your note on children are pickup artists in that way. They can sense if you are incongruent with the way your words and your energy.
Mhm.
The person I'm speaking with next,
Rescues traumatized horses.
very different conversation, but
Trauma,
horses
trauma,
also,
disconnection. Yeah.
they're so perfect at showing us our incongruence if our energy doesn't match
Yeah.
our words or our intention.
Yeah. And I find, we'll talk about this later, but that's what I believe conscious parenting to be, is every time your kid tantrums or does something you don't like, they're picking up your incongruency. And it's your job to say, oh, I take ownership. And how we do that is part of the work. But you can say, you're doing this and shut down or lash out. Or you can be like, well, yeah, I was fitting there, wasn't I? I was. Let me try that again.
I love that in some ways. I love that it's like we actually have more power than we think. We can transform the situation if we do our inner work. But I also want to say, and I think it's important to say, that it's not always within our control as parents to some people do have more explosive children. It's not your fault. I need to hear that. I mean, it's why I'm saying, yes, I do see that my inner work changes the dynamic between us. And yes, we have less tantrums because of it, but my kid is a fireball. Right? So he came out that way. I'm not able to change him, nor is it my problem to change him.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that.
Yeah, I want to make it really clear. Conscious parenting isn't about changing your child's behavior at all. It's about changing your inner tantrum that happens when they do their thing.
Oh, your inner tantrum.
When your Minnie's like, you can't do that. You're making me a bad mom. I'm a piece of shit. We're stuck here. All of those shamey statements. I have a neurodivergent spicy firecracker as well. Like, the goal isn't to make, if you're so conscious, your kids will be calm. No, your goal is to be so conscious that your kids can be fully expressed and not abandon themselves. So not to say, yay, tantrum kids, but it's so your inner child, aka nervous system, isn't tantruming while they do their very appropriate thing. So yes, I don't want anyone to think that if you're conscious, your kids will be perfect. Also, the goal, I always say, conscious parenting is 1% about the kids. They're just there to show you where you're tantruming, where your wounding is, where your patterns are. And then you decide, do I want to heal this today? Do I have the energy? Nope. Okay, we're moving on. And tomorrow when I'm calm and I'm regulated, maybe I'll dive into that trigger. But conscious parenting is about raising the consciousness of the parent. The kid's consciousness is already so high. They're from the other side of the world, universe. They're good. They're us that need to let go of the layers and come back home to who we are. Because we used to be the pickup artists. We used to be the little kids picking up on the parents' emotions. We're all very sensitive beings before this humanity thing set in.
Not kidding.
Oh, I feel that hard. I was raised in New York City with chaotic life, and I was a sensitive being. I was not meant to grow up with that. And my goodness, I love that I grew up in New York City, but that was not where my nervous system needed to be.
Yeah. It wasn't your ideal environment, but it was the environment you were in and shaped you. Like, I think that's the thing, knowing what this whole parenting world, the ideal, we want to be gentle, we want to have no tantrums, there's an ideal, and then there's a realistic goal, and what's within the means emotionally, financially, logistically. There's a lot of nuanced conversation. Like, conscious parenting is such a privileged, you have to be in a really privileged position to pause all the time and not rush if you got work. That's a whole different conversation. It takes a lot. So holding the ideal isn't necessarily a good thing all the time. It can cause more shame.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You know, the concept of respect runs through relational life therapy. And I know it also runs through a certain avenue of parenting techniques, respectful parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about building a respectful relationship to one's inner child. Is that something you've thought about much?
I'm just curious. I don't know, just like all the time and what I do with clients. Yes.
Yeah.
The first thing in my line of work, I say this is the layperson's way to understand inner child work. Your nervous system is your inner child. That's not the actual truth, but it's just a way that makes sense. When you're getting flush, when you are spiraling, your inner child is saying something. And if you don't know, you haven't connected to her yet, or him, or them, your body, they're talking to you. And the analogy I like to say is usually in the early part of your life, your inner child had pure desires to be in connection. And then somebody said something that made it sound like you couldn't fully be you. So you put the inner child in the basement. And they have been down there saying, hello, can you hear me? And there's a little protector part that's saying, I got it. You're safe down there. I've got you so safe. I'm going to handle my life, this protector. And that protector usually gets us lots of great jobs, a great life. And when motherhood comes along, we realize that protector's not really who we are. When people or when women say they've lost themselves in motherhood, they're talking about my protector's not really working anymore. What did you call it? The adaptive child? Or maladaptive?
The adaptive child.
Adaptive.
Is the part of us that created some protective mechanism to keep us safe from circumstances that we were dealt. And often the adaptive child is the one that actually causes the trouble within our relationships.
Yes. Yes. So it fits with the trifecta that I use. So this adaptive child, we'll call it to keep it in relational life. When it comes to building a relationship, I say the first thing we need to do is essentially build an alliance with the adaptive child. She holds the key to the basement door because she's like, I did this to protect you. I love you so much. I've got all of your coloring, got all your favorite things. And you can go try and reach your inner child, but she's going to be like, I don't trust you. You've forgotten about me. The way I view it is we have to go with some humility down here of, okay, it's a little bit of an uphill battle. This isn't a fresh slate. I started inner child work at 30. No, we have 30 years of work you've already done. It just wasn't the work you really would have chosen to do consciously. So the first step is really this sounds weird when I say it, but adapt a face of gratitude for that adaptive part. Thank you for being a perfectionist. I love my perfectionist part. I love when I call on her for party planning. I don't want her to run my life, but thank you. And you can take a break right now. And thank you, anxious person who is always doing the work of everyone in the group. Like, you made sure that we always got a great, thank you. Not like, why did I waste this? It's not a shame. It's like, oh my God, you were like the best protector. And then you start, I always say, throwing love notes down the vents into the inner child's basement. I'm here. And what you did in the story of literally just pausing, talking to your nervous system, I'm here. You're safe. You don't need to come out, but just know that I'm here. This is what I call relatable and practical inner child work. You could go meditate forever. You can visualize forever. Or when your body's getting really like feeling antsy, what is my protector doing? Oh, she's going to go rage clean right now. Oh, she's going to send that text. You know, all those things that we would do. Oh, I see you protecting me. Thank you. I'm here now.
Sure.
And that's like the best way to break a pattern. Doesn't necessarily set up a new one yet, but it will break you from repeating an old pattern in that moment.
Kendra, you are speaking the language of RLT
I know.
perfectly. I mean, literally, like in one of our workshops that our foundation hosts, it's called a relationship boot camp. We have our participants go home and write a letter to their adoptive child. And the first section of that letter is, thank you. Here are all the ways that you saved my ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being able to do that.
Yeah.
And here's what you've cost me.
Connection.
Connection. Yeah. Everyone has a different answer to that.
Right.
But you're saying you don't need to do this right now. And Relational Life's technology for that is take your adoptive child, sticky hands off the steering wheel, and ask them to get in the back seat.
Yeah.
And you, as the wise adult, drive the car of your life.
Yes. Okay. And that
That's
analogy.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
amazing
sometimes
how
use a car
we
analogy and I say
overlap.
the inner child's in the trunk. You can't hear them. And the ego, I call it the ego, but the adoptive child. Yeah. Like she has, no, that's the if you are anxious, I work with anxious women. That's the feeling, the panic attacks, the rashes, the indigestion. She's like, get right out, listen to me. And we listen usually when it gets physical, not physically violent, but panic attacks. And then
That's what it took for me.
same here. Like, who am I? I am so I control everything. And then I realized I literally controlled nothing. There was no adult self or inner mother, as I would call it. It was all an adaptive ego. And there was no adult in the room. I like to say I became a mother at 31. I was a 31-year-old child who had a baby, and then he was neurodivergent. And it was a legitimate recipe for disaster.
To say nothing of the norm of postpartum anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Just the norm. That's not even like, oh, I experienced postpartum depression. I mean, there's people who experience that more. But I think in our culture, nearly every woman who enters into the new role of mother experiences that.
Yeah. And that's very adaptive. You put someone through a complete bodily transformation, initiate into an identity shift, take their sleep away and isolate them. Super appropriate response.
No kidding.
Yeah. Also, I think the stat is like 60% of women exude OCD-like symptoms in the first 6 months. Not that you have OCD, but we're primal. We are animals. Checking your baby. Are they sleeping? And it's your responsibility. Not that you're OCD, but it's an appropriate response. I don't want to pathologize having a totally appropriate response to the situation in which mothers are birthed into this world. There's a saying by Julia Jones, when a baby is born, so is a mother. And your brand new little baby deer left completely alone and your husband's looking for you for advice. You're like, I don't know. I haven't seen a baby in 20 years and I don't have a great relationship with my mom. Got it.
Yeah, but those instinctual impulses to do anything to keep your kid alive, right?
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yes.
And I lived in a place with high fire danger. So my anxiety was like, what happens if there's fire in the middle of the night? What am I going to do? What's the plan? Well, where are we going to go? How are we going to keep this kid alive?
Yeah.
That is normal.
We are meant to look for threats, and parts of our gray matter shrink and other parts get denser for us to connect and catch even more emotional and social cues with our communities, with which we don't usually have in motherhood. We're usually pretty isolated. But you said the word instinctual, and I really want to make sure I put this in here, that there's this saying that we all believe that mothering is natural and instinctual. And
I've heard you talk about this.
You and I will have the instinctual primal urge to nurture, but will we know what to do and how to do it? Absolutely not, unless we were in a community witnessing this so much. Witness these babies learning to nurse and women becoming mothers. So as we have kids later and later in life, in a society that doesn't really want to see babies on airplanes and meltdowns, it's not instinctual. And that is part of this good mother myth that a lot of us face of it's going to be easy to conceive, going to be so easy to nurse. I'm going to know exactly what to do. I've wanted to become a mom for my whole life. And then the proverbial shit hits the fan and you're like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And it's because it's actually a learned skill to mother, and not just women can mother. Fathers, the act of mothering, nurturing is a learned skill. Having a neurodivergent child myself who literally no one could soothe, but I'm like, I'm supposed to be able to soothe him and I can't. And was like, oh, not only was he a very extreme case, also, yeah, I had no training here. None. And before I trained for everything in my life, I would be prepared. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense why I'm struggling. Again, not a personal failing, but it's my job to rectify. But oh, now I know how I got here.
This podcast may bring up complex emotional reactions in you. This is not a replacement for personal support with someone trained to guide you through deeper exploration. Relational Life Foundation offers an incredible program that makes personal therapy services affordable to everyone. You deserve to know about this opportunity to experience private relational life therapy at a sliding scale rate. The foundation will personally match you with an RLT practitioner in training who aligns with your particular background and preferences. You'll even receive a free 15-minute consultation to ensure that it's the right fit before you commit. I hope you'll take this next step toward creating meaningful change in your relationships. Learn more at relationallifefoundation.org or click the link in our show notes. And now, back to our program.
You know, I mentioned my perfectionism. You're referencing your own version of that.
Yeah.
I've learned to start embracing this idea of good enough parenting.
Yeah.
Can you share any strategies that you have for the people that you coach of breaking free from the idea of having to be a perfect parent and embrace good enough?
Yeah. I mean,
it ties to what you've already said.
No, it totally does. I think we can hear that in our brains, like, okay, that sounds great. And a secure attachment can be formed with only 30% attunement. Okay, great. But I still want to be a great effing mom. And I still, like the brain doesn't really care about that data. The part of you that cares, that will release that, is your inner child. When you have built a strong enough connection with that part of you, all ages of inner child, you referenced this when you talked about going in the middle of a snowstorm. You had connected into her a ton of times. This was not your first time. So you knew how to drop in and connect and actually talk to her. When you have that relationship, when she's like, you're actually not going to lock me in the basement. And there is times when you put me in here because you're overwhelmed and life is lifing and you've got to do the things. But she knows that you always come back and you always repair. That's when you get, okay, I can be a good enough mother. They need a mom. They don't need a perfect robot. They need me.
So it's the relationship with our inner child that teaches us that it's okay to not be perfect.
It really is. Wow. Yeah, and that's conscious parenting, is really reparenting that child, building up the inner mother and the inner father enough so she feels safe. And then it's so easy to extend that. As hard as it is for people who were raised in dysfunctional families to say, wow, I'm doing the dysfunctional thing to my kids. It's in their brains. They like, I don't want to do this, but it's so easy. When we have truly reparented, when we have come back to it, earned our secure attachment inside, it's that easy to extend the grace out. And you're not shaming yourself, and it doesn't excuse when you lose your mind on your kids, but you really do. Oh man, I really messed up there. That's not what I wanted to do. And your kids feel that congruency. And then you go, oh, and I'm allowed to move on with my day. Okay. Whoa. And then that's when it feels like magic. My clients always think I do magic. And I'm like, this is called nervous system regulation. We were just living dysregulated for so long that it feels like magic, being able to say, oh my God, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And you hug it out with inner you or outer person, whoever, and you move forward stronger because the ruptures create this scar tissue almost that make it stronger.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What's coming up for me is a memory of consciously dropping a sense of struggle.
Mm.
I was so committed to the idea of this relationship is hard. And I had this learning about urgency, that urgency is actually a form of control and power over.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow those two things together, dropping urgency and dropping my sense of struggle, came into my life around the same time. And it transformed the way that I was able to slow down and be present with both myself and Luca.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. And my view of things, that would be the ego or adaptive child. The urgency, and that was just giving your inner child security. I know this. I know this. I don't know the calm really well, but I know this. And you essentially said, thank you for your service, ego. Thank you for your service, adaptive child. I'm here now. That's not actually serving us as a whole anymore.
You got it.
Yeah. The adult self is never judging you. There's so much self-compassion when there's an adult self online. Right? So when I hear urgency, I just think protector, protector, protector. What are we protecting? What do we need? What do we need?
Yeah. You're speaking about neuroscience-based approaches here. And
Yes.
one of the questions I wanted to ask you about was, how can mothers stay regulated and access their wise adult brain during those most challenging moments? Like, you're speaking to the difference. Like, how do you know when you're in your wise adult brain? And then beyond that, what techniques do you teach your clients for accessing it when it feels so offline?
Yeah. The first way to know is, if you're not in your body, just, what am I doing? Literally say, what am I physically doing right now? If you're rage cleaning, if you're scrolling, if you're like, what am I physically doing? We can get information from that. And if you've done even a little bit of inner child work or nervous system work, you'll know I'm frazzled, whatever you're going to say. I'm right now, right? And then you'll know you're not in your adult self. Even in moments of extreme meltdowns, there's going to be a groundedness. You can think of when you have a boss or something's going on, there's a crisis and there's a leader and they're the person you look to. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to solve it. Not that everything's great, it's going to be good, but there is a part of you that you can touch into that doesn't feel urgent, really. And so I have an analogy, the feather, the brick, or the truck. When I started this work, I needed to get hit by a truck to know that I was at a 10. Okay. I went from 0 to 10. I had no clue. Like, my child just triggered me. I mean, obviously I wasn't at a 0, but I was so disconnected from any sensations in my body. And now the goal is not to never be triggered, but to feel that trigger when it's touching you like a feather. Like, oh, okay. I will be right back because I'm going to lose my shit in 10 minutes, That's the work. Is we don't do this work in the triggers. We do the work outside. We check in with that little child. We check in with the amount of buffering, scrolling, drinking, anything that we're doing, and go, what am I protecting myself from? There isn't much to do in a trigger. Like, take a breath. Damage control, okay? Like, I don't want anyone to think that they're going to, conscious parenting in the very middle. But pause. What am I physically doing right now? Collect that data for later. And then build the relationship with your nervous system, with this neuroscience stuff in between. That is the work. If you're only doing the work in a trigger, there's no adult self online. We can't actually, we've got a bunch of kids in the kitchen cooking and it's cute, but nothing's going to end up the way that we want there.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Again, I love the correlation between your work and relational life work. We teach our clients to take a break when they feel like they're about to do or say something that they're going to regret. Take a walk. Get yourself back online. And that can take at least 20 minutes, if not much longer sometimes. But feel your body. Splash some water on your face.
Yeah.
Get some fresh air. Feel the sunshine. Feel your senses. I actually do this with my kid of like, tell me 5 things that you can see right now. Tell me 4 things that you can hear. 3 things you can smell. 2 things you can touch. 1 thing you can, just to help him. And again, not in the triggers. We don't do that in the tantrums.
No.
Hopefully, maybe one day we will. But
yeah.
play that game.
Experts. That's for expert level. You've been doing it for 10 plus
Absolutely.
years. The foundation has been set. One thing I want to say for parents with younger kids who are watching this comes up a lot in my coaching, is if I'm going to lose my shit, I can't just walk away. And I'm like, if they're safe, you can. I'm just going to abandon them in the middle of their meltdown. I'm like, would you rather walk away, go to the bathroom for a minute, or stay there and spew whatever your inner child and ego wants to do? That is a remnant of the patriarchy, of binary thinking. Like, TVs are bad. But if you were going to yell and you were going to it's a tool, put the TV on. I don't want you to rupture more if you are in awareness enough that you are like, I am sick. I haven't slept. They haven't slept. This is a tool. And if your child's older and they're not, my child was like headbanging and self-harming, I had to be there. But when he got older, I'm like, he's safe. I need to regulate. Like, I need to. And yes, I abandoned him on paper, but I was protecting him, and I came back and I ultimately did what I had to do. So I don't want people to think that you really can't take a break. That's a lot on our nervous system as parents. We want them to feel safe and regulated, not just happy. And when we can't provide that, it puts all of our old stories and I'm a bad mom and blah, 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 blah. It's a lot. So it is okay to walk away from your kid if you know that you're going to do something you don't want to do. And it's beautiful modeling. We want to model what it's like to be angry and not hurt people. Gentle parenting is you can be angry, but you can't hurt people. And then we're angry and hurting people by yelling at them. So model.
I've been working on my own expression of anger. It seems like actually I didn't know how to do that emotion very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been practicing letting Luca really see me change that. I'm just getting my anger out. I'm going to hit the back. Like, it feels like an expression of my anger that is safe and functional for me. And I'm letting him witness that. And
yes.
If it's truly heated, that might not work. But letting him see me do that has given him the tools to know that it's a normal, healthy emotion, anger, and there's safe ways to express it.
Yeah. It's weird when I say this, but because it's such a repressed emotion, especially for women, anger is now my favorite emotion. I don't often feel it anymore, but so much of my life force was let out when I finally tapped into my anger. And another thing that comes up with my clients a lot is, if I open this, it's going to get bad because we haven't been able to process our anger. And just as a safety mechanism, the word I want to leave people with around anger is containment, containment, containment. If it's a literal room, if it's a literal timer, if it's a 30-second primal scream in your car, I want you to kind of ritualize it. I have 45 seconds right now. I used to do this when my kid was having 90-minute sensory meltdowns. It was the worst experience of my life. And I would go up and I would set a timer on my phone, and I have a Tempur-Pedic bed, which is nice and hard. And I would just punch that thing, and then I would have to let it end. I didn't go until I was in some catharsis in some other world. And I wanted to make sure I could regain my composure and go back and attempt yet again, to co-regulate with this little one. But containment. You can contain it. You can say a little tea kettle. We're going to put on 2 Rage Against the Machine songs, and we're going to scream with a steering wheel, and then we're going to stop. Because just sitting there open-ended writing or something can feel and look so expansive and deep and scary. Containment, containment, containment.
I haven't tried that myself, but I love that. But I also want to say that within those contained boundaries or time boundaries you might set, I think it's also really important to let yourself go there.
Yes.
I was doing some work in my Gestalt therapy training, and I had some anger that needed to be moved. And the group kept saying, we want to see you really get it out. It felt like we're stifling. We want to see you have an anger orgasm, right? Like this.
Yeah.
Let it get full. And then, 45 seconds. I've let it out. I'm going to go back to whatever it is, my kid or my grounded self.
Yes.
And I'll titrate as it feels safe to do that.
Yeah.
Trying it on, but let yourself go there. Let yourself
all the way there.
Yeah, all the way there.
It's funny you say orgasm, because I literally call them emotional orgasms. To where the science says that feelings last about 90 seconds. but we cut them off and we stuff them. So then they build up and they're going to pop off, right? But if you can let it rise freely, I named it that because I'm like, I know nothing better than this than an actual orgasm. This is an emotional orgasm. And when I was learning just all therapy through the NLP part of my world, I remember watching demos up on stage and people going up, and I remember feeling their feelings going up and down. And I was sitting in an audience of like 300 people at that time, and I'm feeling a physical feeling rise within me. And then as this person's releasing it, it's going down. And I'm looking around thinking like, I just had an orgasm in the middle of 300 people. It was an emotional orgasm. And when we go in and let them roll and you let them out for 45 seconds, you know that we're not going to get stuck at the top. That'd be nice with a real fun orgasm. But for these, you're not going to get stuck up there. But we have to have enough containers to practice and witness them go down.
And when we truly allow ourselves to be with our own experience and be in our bodies, there's actually no emotion that's so big that we can't handle it.
Yeah.
And through my Gestalt work, actually, I'm learning to trust that in my clients, that they can handle it as long as they're present in their body.
I distinguish between feelings and emotions. And this, again, this particular part is not science-based, but I just find it makes sense for us regular people. Feelings are felt in your body and emotions are the stories about your feelings. So when someone is emotional, their nervous system, their feeling center is having something. And the trained response of our brain is, this means I'm not good enough. This means that I'm about. So when we feel our feelings that are so safe to feel, we get to rewrite the story. We're not that the goal is to not be emotional, but when people are emotional, they're not in their highest self. They're not in their agency in their life. And I think people get caught up in their emotions a lot. Like my husband, I feel like you're wrong. And I'm like, oh, so that's not a feeling. That would be part of the emotional stuff you're trying to tell me right now. But distinguishing for my clients, what is the feeling? And then it's not so scary. Going into all the stories, yeah, I am a bad mom. I should have never had kids. I am not cut out for this. I want to divorce him and I don't have any money. We spiral for years. But in my line of work, that helps a lot of women say the feelings are here and the stories pop up after the feelings. So if we can ride to the end of that orgasm, we can write a new story.
I've never heard that distinguished that way, that emotions are actually the story.
That's a Kendra-ism. So not backed by science. This is just something that I've learned how people understand. Yeah, I want to make that really clear. It seems to be really helpful for my clients and it fits in this conversation.
It does. Yeah. And the truths in the story are not always the same.
Yes. Yes.
You've referenced conscious parenting quite a bit. And I think we'd be remiss to not pause and actually define what that is.
My favorite topic. Conscious parenting is a way when you parent where the two of you are in a equal partnership. There is no hierarchy.
Two of who?
The parent and child.
Thank you.
Yes. Parent and child are in an equal relationship where the knowledge, the learning, the teaching goes both ways on a soul level. Yes, you are older, you know the world, you know more, but you are not the dictator to create whatever you would like on this blank canvas. That is a full, whole, sovereign human being that you are leading into the world. That's kind of like the philosophy of conscious parenting is you are getting to know this complete whole person. That's very different from traditional where the parent is above the child. The parent went to Yale. I want you to go to Yale. I will mold this little being to be whatever their version of success is.
I'm just reminded of what I said earlier, that my kid came out that way.
Yes.
Look, they've got his own thing happening and he's a full human being no matter what I bring to his life. We're in relationship with each other, that we're in contact as human to human.
Yes.
I didn't know this piece of conscious parenting though, but go on.
Yeah. So the way I'm talking about conscious parenting right now is directly from Dr. Shefali, who I studied under. She wrote the book, The Conscious Parent, The Awakened Family. It is a way of, at the basic level, treating our kids like full humans, which sounds silly. We think we already do that until you have a 2-year-old and you realize, no, this is my world and you're living it and you need to be like this and I want you to like this and wear the clothes I want you to wear. And you're like, oh, wow, yeah, no, I'm not actually treating you like a sovereign being. And then the other way I look at conscious parenting is through a guy named Bruce Lipton. And he looks at the first 7 years of life. We are in our theta trance state, and we are soaking up the world and the beliefs around us. He views conscious parenting as conscious programming. I was brainwashed to believe that I was not enough. I need to be quiet and all these negative things, not on purpose, but unconsciously brainwashed. Conscious parenting is consciously brainwashing your kid. You are enough. These things are neutral. You have to decide what these beliefs are. And then your job is to start modeling that. That's the hardest part of conscious parenting, is saying, I'm actually showing my son that the world is an unsafe place and you cannot be yourself and you need to be quiet and anger is bad. And you go, oh. So we use our parenting triggers to repair the first 7 years of our own lives. It's a really tall order to reprogram while programming the next generation. This is not gentle parenting. This is not scripts. This is, how can I anchor back into the programming I would like to be? And then how do I extend that out on a moment to moment basis? It's a lot.
It is a tall order,
Tall order.
but it makes so much more sense than just adopting a script. Because no matter how hard I try, if I'm triggered with my kid, I can't put on a script. That's just not happening for me. And who can remember a script when you're flooded with emotion?
Yeah.
Feeling. So
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. I want to share the free, if there were a script or a method or a framework to conscious parenting.
Yeah.
This is as close as we're going to get to us type A people that want to write it down and do everything. Step 1 is connection to self. Then we can extend that out. Step 1 is connection. 2 is containment. How can I put boundaries in place with my energy, with the room, with the bowls, with the things? And then if you were connected and they are contained and it's still your tantruming, then we need to work on skill building. And that's conscious parenting. Conscious parenting is a uniquely personalized journey based on your childhood history and your unique child in front of you. How do you connect to you? That could be writing, that could be body work, that could be different types of therapy. But you've got to find a way to connect into you. If we haven't connected to self, any of the scripts, any of the skill building is not even going to land, because they're like, I don't trust you up there. That incongruency.
So the first step is connect to self.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second step was about boundaries. Can you say more about that? Because I didn't fully follow. I want to get it.
Yeah. So that's when you're having a struggle with your kid. Like, this is the tactical part of conscious parenting. So they're melting down. If you are not in your adult self and you're like, God, they're so annoying, kids are assholes, you're in like drama. Okay, connect back in, like you did that one time. I can handle this, right? Then if you can't make it through the meltdown, if it's continuing on or there's some type of harm, then we need to go to containment. We're going to take the thing away from the child, or we're going to move to the padded area. So this is like parenting strategy. There's no real strategy other than connect to self and then physically start containing the situation.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's not boundaries the way I was referring to them as psychological boundaries for yourself. These are limits that you're setting with your child.
Yeah. The way you're talking about it would be in part 1, connection to self. You need to know where you're, yeah, that would all be in the capital S, connection to self. And then step 2 is boundaries with your child. And then if you are fully connected, boundary, you're not going to show up in ways that you don't. And the child is still not reacting to the physical boundaries. Then it's like, oh, I think I need some parenting help, or I needed occupational therapy for my kid and all these other things. I need some actual skill building for him and I. Then we go there. And a lot of people go to the skill building without doing the self work. That's the conscious parenting.
I can't wrap my head around how connected this is to RLP. I'm just going to bring it together. So there's 3 phases to RLT. The first is all about gathering data from your clients and really understanding their world and joining with them through the truth of whatever you see is happening. But the second stage is all about inner child work and then skill building. We can't do the skill building without the other steps.
Yeah.
The inner child work comes first.
Yeah. I think that's part of the patriarch. We just want to know how to do the things and be efficient. I got it. Tell me the skill,
Right?
and I'll be good. And in my specific line of work, the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, when we're going to be installing new patterns, we can't do that on a dysregulated nervous system, aka an inner child locked in the basement. So I use Matrescence, splits you open. You were the old you, become the new you. And then we dive in, we do the conscious parenting, inner child work, nervous system, all the science. And then we come out, we say, how do I want to live my life right now? What patterns do I need to install to create this life? But we don't get to do that here. People start my programs are like, I want to leave my husband. Can I leave my husband? I'm like, one, I'm not going to tell you what to do or not to do. But if you're not in harm's way, wait till the end. It's going to be so easy to do all of the things once we've done all of this beautiful inner work. And it looks like nothing's happening because it's invisible. And then your life just like magically transforms and you're like, wow, I love my husband. My kids are I have like new kids. That's what everybody says. Like maybe a new you, but yeah.
It is like magic. Beautiful. I love this conscious parenting stuff. There was also a book that you had recommended to me a while ago of Mama Rising.
Oh, yes. Amy Taylor Kabaz. That's who I studied my Matrescence facilitator training under.
Huh.
She's good, but there's actually a new book I want every mother and father watching to read. It's literally called Matrescence by Lucy Jones. It came out a couple months ago, and it is a much more updated view of matrescence as more research has been done. They say this is a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual journey. It is now also economical, financial, and existential because mortality is involved. And it talks about it in a really relatable way. It's a woman's journey, but she's also a researcher. Matrescence by Lucy Jones. It's so good. So good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know that one. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about people who might be listening to this who are not new parents, but maybe they have a 20-year-old. Is this still applicable to them?
It is. It's cyclical. I'll start there. There will be seasons where your identity is being asked to adjust again. Technically, we start a new matrescence with each child. So it is what it is. And we also enter new matrescence cycles with big life events. It could be for some women, it's going back to work. It's usually when kids enter school, then we have empty nesters. It could be a death or divorce as well. My Kendra analogy is every single time you get a new mom hat, every single time that adjusts, the woman beneath it must adjust as well. And it's not your mothering and your parenting. It's like, okay, now I financially have a family of 5. Now I logistically have to drive here and here. And now like moms with 2 kids think I'm too much. I don't get invited to social gatherings. It's a life adjustment. It's arguably forever, like the word postpartum. I think that when we're really feeling this, I don't know who I am, I don't recognize myself, that usually takes 1 to 3 years from when you surrender to, okay, I'm not going back. I like to say we're not bouncing back, we're bouncing forward now. But you're going to be in the caterpillar suit each round, like typically 1 to 3 years. And then when they leave the nest, 1 to 3 years.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking, my child has changed every quarter. Every few months is a different kid. There are different challenges that I'm up against in more subtle ways, perhaps. There's a continual experiential of this as your kids' challenges shift, as the parenting challenges shift over time.
Yeah, I liken that too. I call it conscious parenting leaps, but like playing off of the Wonder Week leaps when the babies are little.
I remember that.
One, based on just your childhood, you think you've got it and you're like, the relationship with my child is actually going well. We have the sunshine. And then maybe you had a traumatic event happen at 7. And suddenly you're like, what is happening in here? That is a conscious parenting leap if you want to lean in and get the support to view it that way. your inner child is forever modeled by the children in front of you, and they're activating and they're meant to. So you can go back and reparent and grow those parts up again.
So I just want to make sure I get it. If I had a traumatic event happen in my life when I was 7 years old, my child becoming 7 might trigger that to resurface for me.
It might, yes. That was one of the things that started my journey. It was already a very negative experience of motherhood, matrescence, all the things. But I had my bigger trauma started at 3, and my son turned 3. And it was, I knew what I could see on the outside, that the sensory meltdowns were big and everyone's struggling, but I could feel something else was going on. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. But that had nothing to do with him. He was, his pure existence at that age was the mirror. Sometimes their triggers are very specific, but I mean, that could have been my daughter if she was born first. But yes, if you're like, when I went to the prom and I got stood up and then everybody made fun of me, you're going to be probably more anxious about your first one going to prom. It could be that simple, or it could be really deep and traumatic like mine. But I like to say there's no parenting manual, but you could kind of create your own by looking at the highs and the lows of your life. Because we do that with our kids. We're like, wow, you're so little, and wow, you're so amazing, and you're 4. I didn't have that at 4. I wish I had that at 4. It's just, you stare at your kids and these things come up because you just love them so much. Right?
It makes me think about what a gift it is
I know.
to be on this life journey with a little person.
It is truly the greatest gift.
It's such an opportunity for healing if we're open to it.
Yeah. I
And
like,
it's the hardest gift you'll ever swallow.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
not an easy path, but
No. If I heard this like a year in, I'd be like, middle fingers all around. I don't want this. I don't want to lean into this. I want to lean in like Sheryl Sandberg back in the day. I'm not leaning into triggers. Are you kidding me? This is too much. And now I'm like, bring it on. My saying is triggers are treasures. You can't always stop life and mine for gold. But if there's a trigger, there's a treasure for little you to come back and be like, I know more of me now. More parts of me are safe with me, which means I'm more safe to my children.
And what isn't that what it's ultimately about? Creating safety for our children.
It
Some
really
point
is.
for our
It is. It
children.
was safety. We all want to break the cycle. I say breaking the cycle is breaking the cycle of self-abandonment. When we have to cut pieces of ourselves off or shrink or pretend to be in safety and connection and community. And conscious parenting gives us exact, minute little places that we've self-abandoned. Well, if we just do this, they'll like us. And we can reclaim the safety within. It's a lifelong journey of reclaiming. I mean, I don't think it ends. I think it's just more. And you don't have to heal forever, but it makes the hard times more worth it. I think sometimes if you're like, okay, I will find something. I will find the nugget here eventually. I don't see it now and I don't need to do the work, but I know there's something here.
Yeah, it's not always immediate and apparent.
Yeah. I'm like, what will the world look like if we have mostly a generation raised to not self-abandon, not to be like selfish, egoic, all about me, but what if they were really allowed to be themselves? Like how colorful and beautiful and rich and deep would it look? I feel like that's my altruistic goal, is to help mothers raise a generation that feels alive, connected.
Oh, Kendra, I was telling you before we started recording that my plan is to take this conversation, move into relationship with our kids, building healthy relationships with them, and addressing the rise of teenage depression and anxiety and sadly suicide. We're seeing a resurgence, like not a resurgence, but a surge of throughout the globe.
Yeah.
It feels like social justice work. This conversation that starts here with you and moves out into the future that I see for this podcast, but also for the work of Relational Foundations, to do the inner work that we need to do to become conscious parents. It's making intergenerational impact on the mental health of the future generation.
Yeah. I like to say motherhood is spiritual in this conscious parenting lens. Motherhood is spiritual and parenting is activism. Talk to a lot of moms.
Parenting is activism. I love it.
It is. I think especially with the way of the world is, the big world stage is playing out, so many mothers feel helpless. What am I doing? And why am I bringing kids to this world? And not to say don't do the help that you can out there, but what happens in the micro matters. If you are seeing fighting that you don't like, I want you to embody what you want fighting and disagreement to look like in your house. That matters. Truly. If that's all you can do, that's huge. It really is activism. It is.
I agree with you.
Absolutely activism. And this work is spiritual work.
And no one, that's not in the baby books. That is nowhere in preparing for baby, what to expect in the first year. I got thrown, I always say politically, like I never had experience with the healthcare system because I was healthy. Never had experience with the education system since post-college. Becoming a mother introduces me to the institutions of the government that I never, oh yeah, these aren't good, right? Of course they're not, but I had the privilege of never meeting them before. So not only is the identity shift happening, I'm like, this is messy. That's a whole other talk about the framework of motherhood and that whole relating to the world now as a mother. The government systems is how do you seek healthcare? How do you not seek healthcare? How do you clean your house? How do you vote with your dollars? This is so political.
Yes,
How
it
what
is.
you do in your house. Yeah.
As is the lack of governmental and community support for families.
Yes. Yeah.
We're not setting parents up to have success. And we could. So that's another topic I'll be addressing.
Yeah.
in
Love all
future
these conversations.
I wish you could come with me on all of them. I love having you here.
Well,
Definitely.
I just want to move it all forward. Whatever I can do to help, I'll show up.
Your work's so aligned with
Yeah, it
Art.
does.
Mhm. I love the way you show up too. I love tracking the evolution of your work and
Thank
the way
you.
you're a human being in bringing these skill sets to the world.
Thank you.
Mhm.
you.
I love the human being behind the rule.
I always say conscious parenting and matrescence, both hard to spell. Both usually get redlined on your document. Nobody really knows what they are. So I'm like, how do I get this message out? And I do that by using the work that I do myself for myself. Like, how could I be the most me, not trying to be anybody else, and be an example? Like, you can be a mom and not hate motherhood. You can show up. You can make a difference in the world, even if it's here. So thank you for seeing me behind my mission.
Yeah, it's really powerful, Kendra.
Thank you.
How can people find out more about you? They want to follow your work.
Yes. You can find me at kendra-williams.com. And I'm also on social media, Instagram and TikTok at its.kendrawilliams. So
Your content is so good.
yeah,
I don't know about TikTok, but I follow you on Instagram.
it's similar. It's exactly what you hear here. I'm very sweary. So, be mindful around your children. But I'm a real talk straight shooter. And it's fun. I have a lot of fun on social media. So join me. Add me
Yeah,
to
you do.
Virtual Village.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
God, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me be the first guest. This was so much fun. That's great.
It is a gift.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
really have enjoyed hanging out with you.
Same.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Facets of Connection. If you have any questions or would like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode, write me an email or send a voice memo to sarah@facetsofconnection.com. This show is brought to you by Relational Life Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending the chronic epidemic of loneliness by fostering community and transforming relationships. If you want to help us continue this work, you can make a contribution at relationallifefoundation.org/donate. Thank you in advance for your support. See you soon.